Hey guys, tonight we are heading back to the 19th century, to a London lit by gaslight and choked by fog. We're not here to solve a crime with Sherlock Holmes or discuss politics in a smoky gentleman's club. Our mission is much more fundamental, and arguably much more difficult. We're going to try and get a good night's sleep, and let me tell you, in Victorian London, that's a taller order than inventing a steam-powered flying machine. The cures they came up with were questionable. Frankly, some of their bedtime snacks might just finish you off before the insomnia does. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And drop me a comment to let me know where you're listening from and what time it is in your corner of the world. It's always a pleasure to see where our story reaches. Now, dim the lights. Maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into 2 nights' journey together. It's the sound that gets to you first, not a single, identifiable noise, but a low, grinding symphony of the city. A church bell tolls a weary 2 o'clock. In the distance, the rumble of a late-night car, its iron-shod wheels clattering over the slate. Uneven stones, they shout, sharp and sudden, followed by a burst of ragged laughter from a nearby pub, and under it all, the constant, industrial hum of a city that never truly sleeps. You lie on your back, staring up into the darkness of your rented room. The bed is a grand, heavy thing, a 4- poster with thick velvet curtains designed to keep out the drafts. But tonight, they just feel like they're trapping you, suffocating you in the stale air. The sheets are starched and cold. You've tried every position on your left side, on your right side, on your back with your hands folded neatly on your chest like a corpse. Nothing works. Your mind, like the city outside, refuses to be still. You turn your head towards the window. The curtains can't quite block out the glow from the street. It's a strange, ethereal, yellow-green light, cast by the gas lamps that have begun to line London's main thoroughfares. This is the great modern marvel of the age, a symbol of progress and safety, turning night into a pale imitation of day. But for you, it is just another unwelcome guest in your bedroom, another reason your brain won't shut down. And then there's the fog, the infamous London P-super. It's not the clean, romantic mist of a country morn. This is a thick, yellow-brown blanket of smoke, soot, and chemical fumes, belched out by a million coal fires and 1,000 factory chimneys. It has a taste metallic and sour. You can feel it in the back of your throat. It seeps in through the window frame, no matter how tightly you shut it, carrying the scent of progress and lung disease. This is the central problem of your new life. You came to London for opportunity, to be part of this great, roaring engine of the British Empire. You work hard during the dire clerk in a counting house, perhaps your fingers stained with ink, your back aching from bending over a ledger. But the energy of the city, which is so thrilling during the day, becomes a torment at night. As if to prove the point, you hear a new sound from the street below, a rhythmic tapping on a window pane across the street. It's the knocker-up. This is a real and deeply strange profession. A man paid a few pence a week to walk the dark streets with a long pole, tapping on the windows of factory workers to make sure they get to their pre-dawn shifts on time. The irony is crushing. A man is being paid to make noise to wake people up, while you would pay a king's ransom for just a few moments of genuine, blessed silence. This sleep silence feels like a modern affliction, a disease of this mirror, fast-spaced world. Your grandfather, the farmer, slept the deep, dreamless sleep of the physically exhausted. Your fatigue is different. It is a weariness of the mind, a nervous exhaustion that leaves you tired but wired, your thoughts racing in endless, unproductive circles. Historians are still debating this fundamental shift. Was the Victorian obsession with insomnia a genuine medical crisis as brought on by the new stresses of urban, industrial life? Or was it a kind of status symbol, a fashionable melody for the new, anxious middle class, a sign that you were sensitive, intellectual, and important enough to have worries that kept you awake? For some, complaining about one's poor nerves was a way to signal refinement. But for you, lying here as the church bell tolls the quarter-minus-hour. It doesn't feel fashionable. It feels like torture. The ticking of the clock on your mantelpiece sounds like a hammer. The distant rumble of a train feels like an earthquake. Your own thoughts are your loudest enemies. Something has to be done. You can't go on like this, facing each long day with a foggy head and frayed nerve. The traditional remedies, a glass of warm milk, a prayer have failed you. You need something more. You need the help of science, of medicine. You need an expert. Tomorrow, you decide, your eyes tracing the flickering gaslight shadows on the ceiling. Tomorrow you will visit a doctor. You will describe your symptoms, your exhaustion, your racing mind. He will understand. He will have a cure. The modern, scientific solution for this modern, scientific problem. You close your eyes, not with the hope of sleep, but with the fragile resolve of a new plan. The next afternoon, you find yourself on Harley Street, a name that is already becoming synonymous with medical expertise. The doctor's consulting room is exactly as you imagined it: dark wood, shelves lined with leather-bound books, a faint, medicinal smell of carbolic acid, and a large, imposing desk. Behind the desk sits dry Alastair Finch. He is the very picture of a Victorian physician, a man in his 50s with a severe black coat, a magnificent set of mutton minus chopped whiskers, and an air of absolute, unshakable confidence. He exudes an aura of scientific authority. You feel a sense of relief wash over you. Here is a man of reason, a man who can surely tame the chaos in your head. You sit in the heavy leather chair opposite him and begin to describe your sleepless nights. You talk about the city noises, the racing thoughts, the feeling of being perpetually exhausted but unable to rest. You use the fashionable new term you've read about in the papers, insomnia. Dr. Finch listens, his fingertips pressed together to form a small steeple. He nods gravely. He does not interrupt. When you are finished, he leans back in his chair, a look of profound understanding on his face. A classic case, he says, his voice a deep, reassuring rumble. A disorder of the nerves, brought on by the excessive stimulus of modern urban life. He has given your suffering a name, a diagnosis. This alone feels like a victory. The brain, you say, he continues, warming to his theme, is like a boiler. It is a magnificent engine, but it requires careful stoking. You, my dear Sir Madam, have been stoking your boiler too vigorously. Your work, the constant clatter of the city, the reading of sensationalist novels, perhaps all of this over-minus excites the cerebral matter. That night, your engine refuses to shut down. It continues to burn its fuel, consuming your vital energies, leaving you weakened, depleted. This mechanical metaphor is incredibly common in Victorian medical thinking. They saw the body as a complex machine, a system of engines, levers, and plumbing. Illness was a mechanical failure, a breakdown that could be fixed with the right intervention. The key to a cure, he says, leaning forward conspiratorially, is twofold. We must first soothe the over-minus excited nerves, and second, we must ensure the digestive system is in perfect working order, as a disordered stomach is the great enemy of repose. He stands up and walks over to a cabinet filled with mysterious minus-looking glass bottles. He takes down a small, dark bottle filled with a thick, treacly liquid. This, he says, holding it up to the light, is a mild bromide solution, a wonderful nerve tonic. It will calm the cerebral agitation without the unfortunate habit-forming qualities of the opiates, which I prescribe only in the most extreme cases. He writes out a prescription for you to take to the chemist. Then, he returns to his desk and pulls out a small, printed pamphlet. The title, in large, confident letters, reads A Guide to Healthful Repose. I have outlined a regimen for you, he explains, tapping the pamphlet. It involves diet, exercise, and proper sleep hygiene. You must follow it precisely. He proceeds to give you a verbal summary. No heavy meals in the evening. No tea or coffee after midday. A brisk, constitutional walk for exactly 1 hour before dusk, but not so vigorous as to become over-minus heated. And above all, no mental stimulation before bed. No business ledgers. No thrilling fiction. He warns, I would recommend a chapter of a dull sermon or perhaps a treatise on agricultural yields, something to tranquilize the mind. This is where you encounter a wonderfully bizarre and specific Victorian medical concept, auto-intoxication. Many doctors of the period were convinced that a vast number of ailments, from headaches to insanity, were caused by the body poisoning itself with toxins produced by improperly digested food fermenting in the colon. This theory, now completely debunked, was a major obsession. It explained why your doctor was as concerned with the state of your bowels as he was with the state of your brain. The historical debate here is about the nature of the Victorian doctor-patient relationship. Was the doctor a genuine scientist, applying the best available knowledge to help his patients? Or was he more of a secular priest, a figure of authority who used a new language of science to provide comfort, reassurance, and a sense of control in a frightening and confusing world? Many medical historians argue that while figures like Dr. Finch were often wrong in their specific theories, they were practicing in good faith, based on the limited understanding of the time. They were also masters of the placebo effect, the confidence of the doctor, the impressive consulting room, the complex sounding diagnosis, and the detailed regimen. All of this could have a powerful psychological effect on the patient, making them feel that something was being done, which in itself could be therapeutic. Others, however, are more critical. They argue that the Victorian medical establishment was deeply patriarchal and authoritarian. The doctor's role was to issue commands, and the patient's role was to obey. The idea of a collaborative partnership in your healthcare was completely alien. Dr. Finch is not offering you options. He is giving you orders. He hands you the pamphlet and the prescription. Follow this regimen for 2 weeks, and you will be sleeping like a babe in its cradle, he says with a confident smile. He charges you a fee that makes your eyes water. You leave his office, clutching the pamphlet and the prescription. You feel a strange mixture of hope and skepticism. His theories sound scientific, logical even, but a part of you wonders if a dull sermon and a bottle of salty water can truly conquer the roaring monster of your insomnia. Still, he is the expert. He is the man of science. You will do exactly as he says. Your journey to a cure has officially begun. That evening, you embark on your new Dr. approved regimen with the solemnity of a religious ritual. You eat a light supper of dried oats and poached egg. You take your brisk, enjoyable walk as the gas lamps hiss to life. You return to your room. Read a numbingly dull chapter on crop rotation from a farmer's almanac, and take your first dose of the bromide tonic. It tastes faintly of salt and despair. You get into bed, feeling virtuous and hopeful, and then you remember the final part of Dr. Finch's instructions, the part he seemed most excited about. It is your new antidote, a sleep-inducing bedtime snack designed to soothe the nerves and aid digestion. It is not warm milk. It is a steaming cup of beef tea. You go to your small kitchen and prepare this strange concoction. Beef tea was one of the great culinary fads of the Victorian era, prescribed by doctors for everything from the common cold to nervous exhaustion. It was seen as a miracle food, a concentrated essence of life giving energy. But it is not a soup or a broth as you would know it. It is a specific, medicalized beverage, the most famous brand, the one recommended by your doctor, is Liebig's extract of meat. It comes in a small, dark jar. On inside is a thick, dark brown, salty paste. The label is covered in scientific looking text and boasts of the endorsement of royalty and the medical establishment. The instructions are precise. You are to dissolve a quarter teaspoon of the paste in a cup of hot water. You do so. The paste dissolves into a cloudy, brown liquid that smells intensely, almost aggressively, of beef. It is not an unpleasant smell, but it is a strange one for a bedtime drink. You take a tentative sip. It is incredibly salty and savory. It tastes like the very soul of a cow has been distilled into a single, briny shot. You drink it down, feeling the warmth spread through your stomach. You get back into bed, The salty, beefy taste lingers in your mouth. You lie there, waiting for the promised wave of tranquility to wash over you. You wait, and wait. The beef tea, instead of making you sleepy, seems to have woken up your digestive system. Your stomach gurgles. You feel a strange, savory energy, as if you've just eaten a steak, not a soothing bedtime drink. This is where you encounter a wonderfully weird and specific piece of Victorian marketing genius. The inventor of Liebig's extract of meat. The German scientist Justus von Liebig was a brilliant chemist. He developed the product as a cheap, nutritious food substitute for the poor. He genuinely believed his beef extract could solve malnutrition. The problem was, it killed them. While the extract contained some minerals and B vitamins, it had almost no fat or protein. It was essentially a beef minus flavored salt minus wheat. It had no real nutritional value. So how did it become so popular? This is a question that fascinates food historians and marketing experts. The answer is clever branding. The company marketed the product not as a food, but as a restorative, a nervine tonic. They shifted its purpose from nourishing the body to soothing the nerves. They targeted the anxious middle classes, not the starving poor. They got endorsements from doctors, printed pseudo-scientific pamphlets, and created a mystique around their brown paste. Was it a deliberate deception, or did they genuinely believe their own hype? The debate continues. They sold the idea of health, and the Victorians, obsessed with their own frailty, bought it by the jar if you will. You lie in bed, the beefy aftertaste mocking your attempts at sleep. The city noises seem as loud as ever. The dull sermon has not tranquilized your mind. It has only made you more aware of how active it is. The bromide tonic has had no discernible effect. And the beef tea, your great hope, has done nothing but make you thirsty. You start to think about the logic of it all. Why would a salty meat drink be considered soothing? The theory, as dry, Finch explained it, was that it was light on the digestive system. A full stomach, particularly one digesting a heavy, fatty meal, was thought to draw vital energy away from the brain, leading to nightmares and restless sleep. A pre-minus digested, liquid food like beef tea, on the other hand, was believed to provide gentle nourishment without taxing the system. This obsession with pre-minus digestion led to a whole range of other popular invalid foods. There was Brand's essence of chicken, Benger's self-minus digestive food, a kind of gruel made with pancreatic enzymes, and countless other powders and potions designed to be as bland to be as bland and inoffensive to the Victorian stomach as possible. The church bell tolls 3. Your first night on the new regimen has been a spectacular failure. You feel a pang of resentment towards the confident dry, Finch and his scientific certainties. You are beginning to suspect that the road to a good night's sleep is not paved with salty meat paste. You get out of bed and drink a large glass of water to wash away the taste of your cure. The journey, you realize with a sinking heart, is going to be much longer and much stranger than you thought. Your disastrous experiment with beef tea leaves you feeling discouraged. But you are not ready to give up on drive. Finch's advice entirely. You read his pamphlet, A Guide to Healthful Repose, and you realize that the core of his philosophy, the great unifying theory of all your ailments, is a single, powerful obsession: digestion. You learn that for the Victorians, digestion was not just a biological process, it was a moral one. It was the battlefield where the forces of order and chaos, of health and disease, of virtue and vice, fought for control of your body and soul. A healthy digestive system, a good stomach, was the foundation of a healthy, productive, and moral life. An unhealthy one was the root of all evil. The condition they feared above all others was dyspepsia, or they, all term for what we would now call indigestion, heartburn, or irritable bowel syndrome. But for Victorians, dyspepsia was not a minor discomfort. It was a serious, chronic disease, a sign of a fundamental weakness in one's constitution. It was believed to be the cause of a terrifying array of secondary symptoms: melancholy, anxiety, nervous exhaustion, hysteria, and, of course, your old enemy, insomnia. Dr. Finch's pamphlet is filled with dire warnings about the dangers of a disordered stomach. He writes that dyspeptic slumber is not a true repose, but a troubled sea of nightmares and morbid fancies, as the foul vapors of undigested matter rise from the stomach to cloud the brain. The imagery is vivid and terrifying. Your stomach is a potential swamp of poison, and its fumes are rising up to corrupt your mind while you sleep. This obsession with digestion explains the incredible focus on diet. The Victorian middle-class diet was, by modern standards, incredibly heavy. A respectable dinner might consist of multiple courses of meat, heavy puddings, rich sauces, and copious amounts of wine. It was a diet designed to display wealth and status, but it was also a recipe for digestive distress. This is where you encounter a wonderfully strange and specific culinary contradiction. The Victorians loved to eat rich, heavy food, but they were also terrified of it. This led to a whole culture of digestive aids and post-meal rituals. After a large dinner, gentlemen would often remain at the table to drink port, which was believed to aid the digestion of the red meat they had just consumed. Ladies would retire to the drawing room for a cup of tea, which was thought to have a similar settling effect. The historical debate here is about the cause of this widespread dyspeptic culture. Was there a genuine epidemic of digestive problems in the Victorian era, or was it a form of collective hypochondria, an anxiety manufactured by doctors, patent medicine salesmen, and the burgeoning food industry? Some historians argue that there were real, physical reasons for the Victorian stomach troubles. Their water supply was often contaminated, their food preservation methods were rudimentary, and their diet was often unbalanced. The heavy course worn by women also put immense pressure on their internal organs, which could not have helped matters. Other scholars, however, see dyspepsia as a social disease. They argue that the vague and varied symptoms of dyspepsia, fatigue, anxiety, general malaise were a perfect way to express the stresses of a rapidly changing, competitive, and uncertain world. You couldn't say you were suffering from anxiety about my precarious social status, but you could say you had a delicate stomach. Dyspepsia became a socially acceptable language for expressing psychological distress. It medicalized the anxieties of modern life. Armed with this new understanding, you become a detective of your own digestion. You follow Dr. Finch's advice to the letter. You avoid the foods on his forbidden list, which includes such dangerous items as pork, cucumbers, and hot bread fresh from the oven, which was believed to form a leaden mass in the stomach. You eat your meals at the exact same time every day. You chew every bite of food a prescribed number of times. The practice made popular by the American health guru Horace Fletcher, who was known as the Great Masticator. You become hyper-aware of every gurgle and rumble from your midsection. Is that the healthy sound of efficient digestion, or the ominous prelude to the production of foul vapors? You lie in bed at night, your hands on your stomach, as if you can physically prevent it from betraying you. Your sleep does not improve. In fact, your new obsession with your own internal plumbing has given your anxious mind a whole new set of things to worry about. You are no longer just afraid of not sleeping. You are afraid of your own cucumber consumption. You realize that the problem with Dr. Finch's theory is that it creates a feedback loop of anxiety. Your insomnia, he says, is caused by a bad stomach, but you know that your own anxiety is a major cause of your digestive issues. The cure is becoming part of the disease. You look at the picture of robust health on the cover of the doctor's pamphlet, a smiling, rosy cheeked family eating a sensible breakfast. They look so calm, so orderly, so well digested. You, on the other hand, feel like a walking civil war, a constant battle between your excited nerves and your disordered stomach. You are beginning to suspect that to find sleep, you will have to look beyond this internal battlefield. The cure must lie elsewhere. Your faith and drive. Finch's bland, generalized regimen is beginning to wane. The beef tea has failed, and your obsessive focus on digestion has only made you more anxious. You turn to a new source of wisdom, the popular press. The newspapers and household magazines are filled with advice for the sleepless, offering a dizzying array of very specific and often contradictory. Food minus based cures. You enter the strange world of anodyne foods, specific ingredients believed to have powerful sleep minus inducing properties. It's no longer about what you don't eat. It's about the magical properties of what you do eat. One article, written in a confident, authoritative tone, extols the virtues of the humble onion. The raw onion, sliced and eaten with a piece of dry bread before retiring, will be found to be a most effective support of it. It claims, the theory is that the onion's pungent oils have a calming effect upon the nervous system. You are skeptical, but also desperate. That night, you dutifully munch on a raw onion. The taste is sharpened, minus watering, and the smell clings to you. Your room, and your bedclothes. You lie in bed, your stomach gurgling in protest, your breath a weapon of mass destruction. Sleep, unsurprisingly, does not come. You have only succeeded in making yourself a social pariah to anyone who might share your bedroom. Undeterred, you try the next suggestion you find. This one from a popular ladies' magazine. It recommends a late minus night supper of oysters. The oyster, the article explains, being rich in phosphates, is a powerful brain minus food, and by nourishing the depleted cerebral matter, it promotes a natural and restorative slumber. The idea that a specific food could directly feed and repair the brain was a very popular one. So, you buy a dozen oysters from a street vendor. You eat them raw, on the half-minus shell, a slippery, salty, and slightly unnerving experience. They are surprisingly delicious. You lie in bed, feeling rather sophisticated, and wait for your brain to be nourished into a state of slumber. Instead, you feel a mild but persistent sense of indigestion. The promised sleep remains elusive. This is where you discover a truly wonderful and bizarre piece of Victorian food science, the doctrine of signatures. This was an old, pre-minus scientific idea, but it still held a powerful grip on the popular imagination. The doctrine stated that a plant's or an animal's appearance gave clues to its medicinal use. For example, a plant with a heart-minus shaped leaf must be good for the heart. By this logic, walnuts, which look like tiny brains, were obviously a powerful brain tonic, and lettuce, which produces a milky white sap when its stem is cut, was thought to have sleep-minus inducing properties, similar to opium, which also comes from a plant with a milky sap, the poppy. A lettuce sandwich is a fine thing for the sleepless. One article advises, you try it. It is crunchy, watery, and has absolutely no effect whatsoever. The historical debate here is about the source of this folk wisdom. Was it the remnant of ancient, pre-minus industrial herbal knowledge, passed down through generations, or was it a new phenomenon, a kind of urban folklore created by the collision of old wives' tales with the new, exciting, but poorly understood language of science? Some historians argue that many of these food cures have a basis in traditional herbalism. Hops, for example, which were used to make beer, were also known to have sedative properties, which is why a hop pillow was a common folk remedy for seasons. But in the city, this knowledge became distorted and mixed with pseudo-minus scientific jargon. Other scholars argue that the Victorian press essentially invented many of these cures. In a competitive market, magazines and newspapers needed to provide their readers with a constant stream of new, exciting, and easy minus-to-minus follow advice. Recommending a miracle food was a perfect way to do this. It was simple, it sounded plausible, and it gave the reader a sense of agency, a feeling that they could take control of their health with a simple trip to the market. Did the editor of the Ladies' Home Companion really believe that oysters cured insomnia? Or did they just need to fill 2 columns on the health and beauty page? Your culinary journey becomes increasingly strange. You try celery, which is said to calm the nerves. You try a glass of hot water with a spoonful of honey, a remedy that has at least stood the test of time. You read about the soporific effects of a baked apple, eaten skin and all. Your kitchen begins to look less like a place for cooking and more like a chaotic laboratory for questionable experiments. Each new remedy offers a tiny, flickering spark of hope, which is invariably extinguished by another long, sleepless night. You are not just tired, You are also starting to suffer from a strange variety of food-related side effects. The onion breath, the oyster indigestion, the sheer monotony of lettuce sandwiches. You sit at your kitchen table, looking at the collection of anodyne foods you have assembled. You've tried to find a magic bullet, a single, simple ingredient that will unlock the door to sleep. But your quest has only led you down a rabbit hole of bizarre recipes and false promises. You are beginning to suspect that the cure for your modern ailment will not be found in the greengrocer's cart. You need something stronger, something more scientific, something, perhaps, from the chemist's shop. Your experiments with onions and oysters have left you tired, frustrated, and smelling faintly of a compost heap. The gentle, food-based cures have failed. Your sleepsence feels like a fortress, and you decide it is time to bring out the heavy artillery. You need a potion, a drug, something that will knock you out and provide a few hours of blessed oblivion. You head to the chemist's shop. The chemist's shop is a magical, mysterious place. It smells of strange herbs and chemicals. The dark wooden shelves are lined with hundreds of glass bottles, some large and filled with colorful liquids, others small and dark, bearing labels with cryptic Latin names. In the 19th century, a chemist, or pharmacist, was not just a dispenser of doctors' prescriptions. He was a creator of his own remedies, and his shop was an arsenal of potent, and largely unregulated, substances. You approach the counter and discreetly explain your problem. You are having trouble sleeping. You need something to ensure a full night's repose. The chemist, a serious-looking man in a starched apron, nods knowingly. He doesn't need to consult a medical book. He knows exactly what you need. It is the single most popular, most widely used, and most dangerous medicine of the entire Victorian-era. He reaches under the counter and produces a small, dark blue bottle. The label, often adorned with a skull and crossbones, reads simply laudanum. Laudanum, the name itself, sounds like a lullaby. It was, quite simply, a tincture of opium, a solution of raw opium dissolved in alcohol. It was cheap, it was legal, and it was available over the counter, without a prescription, to anyone who wanted it. You could buy it as easily as you could buy soap. It was the Victorian equivalent of aspirin, Tylenol, and Valium, all rolled into one. It was used for everything. Crying baby, a few drops of laudanum in its milk often sold under brand names like Godfrey's Cordial or Mrs. Winslow's Soothing Syrup. A touch, a laudanum-soaked piece of cotton. A spoonful of laudanum, a nervous disposition, a daily dose of laudanum. And for insomnia, it was considered a miracle cure. The chemist sells you the bottle with a few simple instructions. 10 to 15 drops in a glass of water before bed. He says, do not exceed the recommended dose. It is a warning that is both routine and terrifyingly inadequate. That night, you hold the small bottle in your hand. It feels heavy with promise. You carefully measure out 12 drops of the dark, reddish-brown liquid into a glass of water. It smells sweet and faintly bitter. You drink it down. The taste is unpleasant, but you barely notice. You are focused on the anticipated effect. You get into bed, and for the first time in what feels like years, something happens. A warm, pleasant heaviness begins to spread through your limb. The sharp edges of your anxiety begin to soften and blur. The endless cacophony of the city outside seems to fade, replaced by a gentle, internal hum. Your racing thoughts slow down, become disconnected, and then, one by one, they simply float away. You are not just sleepy. You are drifting on a warm, calm, opium-scented sea. You close your eyes, and for the first time, you do not fear the long hours ahead. You sink into a deep, dreamless, and profoundly unnatural sleep. This is where you discover a strange and tragic detail of Victorian life: the accidental overdose. Because laudanum was so common and its potency could vary wildly from one chemist to another, accidental deaths were shockingly frequent. A person accustomed to a weaker batch might take their usual dose from a new, stronger bottle and simply never wake up. The papers were filled with short, sad stories of people found deceased in their beds, an empty laudanum bottle on the nightstand. The historical debate about laudanum is a complex one. How could a society that was so obsessed with morality, self-control, and respectability be so utterly dependent on a dangerously addictive narcotic? Some historians argue that it was a case of ignorance. The true nature of opiate addiction was not well understood for much of the century. Laudanum was seen as a gift from God, a medicine that could relieve suffering in an age with few effective painkillers. Many people, particularly women who were prescribed it for female complaints, slipped into lifelong addiction without ever realizing what was happening. Famous figures from the era, like Elizabeth Barrett Browning, Wilkie Collins, and Samuel Taylor Coleridge, were all well-known laudanum addicts. Other historians, however, argue that the Victorians were not as naive as they seemed. They suggest that laudanum use was a form of managed hedonism. In a society that publicly repressed so many forms of pleasure, laudanum offered a secret, private, and medically sanctioned escape. It was a way to cope with the immense pressures physical, social, and psychological of Victorian life. Was it a medical tragedy or a secret coping mechanism? The answer is likely both. You wake up the next morning feeling groggy, with a dry mouth and a dull headache, but you have slept. You have had 8 hours of solid, uninterrupted oblivion. It feels like a miracle. The memory of the warm, peaceful drift into sleep is incredibly seductive. That night, you take another dose, and the next night, you start to look forward to it, to that moment when the bitter liquid promises to silence the world and your own mind. The bottle on your nightstand is becoming a friend, a confidant, a necessary partner in your nightly quest for peace. You are solving your insomnia, but you are beginning to sense, with a faint, cold dread, that you may be creating a much larger and more dangerous problem. Your newfound friendship with the laudanum bottle provides a temporary, chemical peace, but a part of you is wary. You've heard the whispers about its dangers, the stories of people who became slaves to the poppy. You decide to seek a safer, more modern alternative. You turn, once again, to the pages of the daily newspaper, and you enter the loud, chaotic, and fantastically dishonest world of patent medicines. The newspapers are plastered with advertisements for 1,000 different miracle cures. These are not modest, clinical ads. They are masterpieces of sensationalist marketing, filled with bold, capital letters, dramatic woodcut illustrations, and breathless testimonials from supposedly cured patients. They promise to cure everything from consumption and cancer to baldness and lost manhood. And for a sleepless nation, they offer an endless variety of soothing syrups, nerve tonics, and restorative cordials. You are drawn to an advertisement for Drive, Barton's celebrated silent friend. The ad features a drawing of a serene, sleeping woman, an angelic smile on her face. The text is a torrent of pseudo-scientific jargon and emotional appeals. Are your nights a torment of wakeful anxiety? It asks, is your nervous system shattered by the relentless pace of modern life? Dr. Barton says, ILENTFRIEND, a revolutionary new preparation based on the principles of electromagnetic acts directly upon the pineal gland to induce a deep, natural, and refreshing slumber, without any of the deleterious effects of the opiates. It sounds perfect, scientific, safe, and modern. You go to the chemist and buy a bottle. It is more expensive than laudanum, which only adds to its mystique. The bottle is beautifully designed, with an embossed label and a cork sealed with wax. It looks official. It looks trustworthy. You take a spoonful that night. It tastes vaguely of herbs, sugar, and alcohol. You lie in bed, waiting for the electromagnetic botanical magic to begin. You feel a pleasant warmth, a slight light-headedness, and you do, eventually, fall asleep. What you don't know is that the revolutionary new preparation is revolutionary in its marketing, not its ingredients. This is the great secret of the patent medicine industry. An analysis of Drive, Barton's silent friend would reveal that its primary active ingredients were a large amount of cheap alcohol and a hefty, unlisted dose of morphine, a derivative of opium. You have simply paid 5 times the price for a fancier, sweeter, and cleverly disguised version of the very drug you were trying to avoid. This was the standard practice of the era. The soothing syrups for babies that promised to be opium-free were often loaded with morphine. The herbal cough remedies were laced with cannabis or chloroform. The tonics for female weakness were mostly alcohol and opiates. The entire industry was built on a foundation of lies, false advertising, and a profound public ignorance of chemistry. This is where you encounter a wonderfully weird and specific figure of the age, the quack doctor. These were the charismatic, often self-proclaimed, professors and doctors who invented and marketed these cures. They were master showmen. They would often travel from town to town with a medicine show, putting on a performance with music and magic tricks before launching into a dramatic sales pitch for their miracle elixir. They understood that selling the cure was all about selling hope, and they were brilliant at it. The historical debate here is a heated one. Were the creators of these patent medicines cynical, murderous villains who knowingly poisoned the public for profit? Or were they, in some cases, true believers in their own strange concoctions? There is no doubt that many were shameless frauds. They preyed on the fears and desperation of a public that had few other options. The lack of regulation, there was no Food and Drug Administration, meant they could make any claim they wanted, with no legal consequences. They were the snake oil salesmen of legend. However, some historians argue for a more nuanced view. They suggest that the line between a quack and a regular doctor was often blurry. Both used treatments that were ineffective or harmful. Both relied on the patient's belief in their authority. And some patent medicine inventors, raised on a diet of folk remedies and pseudo-science, may have genuinely believed that their mixture of herbs and alcohol was a legitimate cure. They were deluded, perhaps, but not necessarily malicious. Were they con men, or just incompetent enthusiasts? The answer probably varied from bottle to bottle. You continue to take your silent friend for a few nights. It works, more or less, but you start to notice that you need a slightly larger dose each night to get the same effect. The grogginess in the morning is more pronounced. You are sleeping, but it is not the natural, refreshing slumber the advertisement promised. It is a heavy, drugged stupor. One day, you read a small article in the paper, a report from a medical journal that has analyzed the contents of several popular patent medicines. It lists dry, bought silent friend as containing a dangerous amount of opiates. Your heart sinks. You look at the beautifully designed bottle on your nightstand. It is not a silent friend. It is a liar. You have been swindled. You have been trading your insomnia for a secret addiction, and paying a premium for the privilege. You pour the rest of the sweet, deceptive syrup down the drain, feeling a sense of anger and betrayal. You are back where you started, sleepless and now deeply cynical. The promises of the modern marketplace, you realize, are as empty as the promises of the Rani. You have been betrayed by the chemist and the quack. The drugs, both legal and illicit, have proven to be a dangerous dead end. You decide to turn away from chemistry and towards physics. You will re-engineer your sleeping environment itself, based on the most cutting-edge scientific principles of the day. Your new obsession becomes the air you breathe. You live in an age that is terrified of bad air. The prevailing scientific theory of disease for much of the century is miasma theory. Doctors and the public alike believe that many diseases, from cholera to the common cold, are caused by miasma spell, invisible clouds of pestilence that rise from rotting organic matter, stagnant water, and the breath of the sick. The smell of decay is not just unpleasant. It is believed to be the vehicle of death itself. This creates a terrible dilemma for the insomniac. On one hand, you crave fresh air. The stuffy, enclosed air of your bedroom feels oppressive. On the other hand, there is the night air. The night air is considered particularly dangerous, doubly charged with miasmatic poisons. To open your window at night, especially in a city like London, is to invite all the nameless horrors of the miasma into your home. It is seen as a form of reckless self-endangerment. You are caught in a classic Victorian catch-4 Your stuffy room prevents sleep, but opening the window might kill you. You try to compromise. You open your window just a crack, an inch at most, and stuff a cloth in the opening, hoping to filter the air before it reaches your delicate lungs. You lie in bed, listening to the muffled city sounds, imagining a battle being waged in the fabric of the cloth. As brave little fibers fight off the invading hordes of miasma, it does not help you sleep. Your anxiety about the air you breathe leads you to investigate the science of ventilation. The newspapers and household manuals are filled with complex, often contradictory, advice on how to ensure a healthful circulation of air in the home. You learn that the fireplace is not just for heat. It is a crucial ventilation device, drawing the vitiated air from the room up the chimney. This is why you must never block your chimney. This is where you discover a wonderfully strange and specific Victorian invention, the ventilating brick. These were special bricks with small holes or grates built into them, designed to be incorporated into the walls of a house to allow for a constant, gentle, unscientific circulation of air, without creating a dangerous draft. You even consider hiring a bricklayer to install one in your bedroom wall, but the cost is prohibitive. The historical debate here is about the impact of miasma theory. Was it a completely useless and wrong-headed idea that held back medical progress, or did it, in a strange, roundabout way, actually lead to positive changes? On one hand, miasma theory was, of course, completely wrong about the cause of most infectious diseases. The real culprits were germs, bacteria, and viruses, tiny organisms that miasma theorists did not know existed. This focus on bad smells led doctors to ignore the real vectors of transmission, like contaminated water, which was the true cause of the great cholera epidemics of the era. On the other hand, some historians argue that miasma theory had a happy side effect. The belief that disease was caused by filth and decay led the great sanitary reformers of the age, men like Edwin Chadwick, to advocate for massive public works projects. They pushed for the creation of sewer systems, the provision of clean drinking water, and the regular collection of garbage. They were cleaning up the cities to fight the miasma, but in doing so, they were accidentally destroying the breeding grounds for the germs they didn't know about. They got the right answer for the wrong reason. Did their flawed theory inadvertently save more lives than it cost? It remains a point of contention. You, however, are not concerned with public sanitation. You are concerned with the air in your bedroom. You become a connoisseur of drafts. You hold up a candle in different parts of the room, watching the flame flicker, trying to map the invisible currents of air. You rearrange your furniture, moving your bed away from the window, the source of the deadly night air, but not too close to the fireplace, which could create a dangerous updraft. Your bedroom begins to look less like a place of rest and more like a fluid dynamics laboratory. One night, you wake up in a cold sweat. You are convinced that the faint, sweet smell from the potted geranium on your windowsill is a form of vegetable miasma, a toxic vapor that is poisoning your sleep. You stumble out of bed and put the offending plant out in the hallway, shutting the door firmly behind it. You get back into bed, your heart pounding. You have made your room a fortress against the invisible enemy of bad air. It is sealed, it is scientific, and it is completely, utterly airless. You lie there, slowly suffocating in your own self-generated FUG, and realize that your quest for the perfect sleeping environment has only created a new, more claustrophobic prison. You are no closer to sleep, but you are beginning to understand the profound, almost primal, fear of the invisible that haunted the Victorian mind. Your battle with the invisible enemy of the night air has ended in a stuffy, hairless defeat. You realize that a piecemeal approach, a cracked window here, a moved geranium there is not enough. You need a total system, a sleeping apparatus designed from the ground up according to the very latest principles of science and hygiene. You decide to invest in a new bed. You visit a grand furniture emporium, a testament to the Victorian love of solid, heavy, and ornate craftsmanship. The salesman, a man with an almost religious reverence for his product, does not show you simple bed frames. He shows you sleeping systems. He leads you to the pride of the showroom. It is not just a bed. It is a monument. It is a massive iron bester. Iron, he explains, is the material of the modern age, Unlike the old minus-fashioned wooden beds of your parents' generation, an iron bester is hygienic. It does not harbor bed bugs or other vermin in its cracks. It is a fortress of cleanliness. The design is stark and scientific. The frame is painted a functional black, with a few decorative brass knobs that gleam under the gas lights. But the real innovation, the salesman explains, is the mattress support. Gone are the old, hanging rope supports. They have been replaced with a tightly woven wire mesh, perfectly ventilated, the salesman says, patting it proudly. It allows the free circulation of air around the mattress, preventing the buildup of stagnant, vitiated bodily humus during the night. Your bed will now be able to breathe, even if you can't. On top of this wire mesh sits a new kind of mattress, one stuffed not with feathers or straw, but with horsehair. Horsehair, you are told, is a superior filling. It is firm, durable, and does not clump like feathers. It provides the spinal support that is essential for a restorative night's sleep. It is also, you suspect, incredibly lumpy and unforgiving. This is where you encounter a wonderfully weird and specific theory of sleep science, the importance of magnetic alignment. The salesman, lowering his voice, points out a small, compass-like device attached to the headboard. This bed, he says, is designed to be positioned in perfect alignment with the Earth's magnetic field. You must sleep with your head to the north and your feet to the south. This allows the body's natural electrical currents to harmonize with the great telluric forces of the planet, promoting a deep and dreamless slumber. This belief in a magnetic sense or animal magnetism was a powerful undercurrent in Victorian pseudo-minus science. It was the idea that the human body was sensitive to invisible magnetic forces and that aligning oneself with these forces could cure a wide range of nervous disorders. Was your insomnia caused by a simple misalignment with the North Pole? It sounds absurd, but in the gas-lit gloom of the furniture emporium, surrounded by the salesman's unshakable confidence, it seems almost plausible. The historical debate is about the Victorian attitude towards technology in the home. Was the home seen as a sanctuary, a refuge from the harsh, industrial world outside? Or was it seen as another machine to be perfected, a space to be rationalized and controlled through the application of scientific principles? Some historians argue for the sanctuary model. They point to the Victorian love of clutter, of heavy curtains, of soft furnishings, of family photographs. They see the home as a deeply personal, emotional space, a haven in a heartless world. Other scholars, however, argue that the home was just another frontier for the Victorian obsession with improvement and efficiency. The rise of domestic science as a field of study, the publication of countless household management guides, and the invention of new domestic technologies from the flushing toilet to the gas stove all point to a desire to turn the home into a well-oiled machine. This scientific bed is a perfect example. It is not a piece of furniture designed for comfort. It is a piece of equipment designed to produce a predictable outcome, a healthful night's sleep. Is a bed a nest or a machine? The Victorians, it seems, wanted it to be both. You are overwhelmed by the science, the hygiene, the sheer magnetic force of it all. You spend a small fortune and arrange for the bed to be delivered. The new bed arrives. It is a behemoth. It dominates your small room. That night, you perform the new ritual. You use a compass to ensure the bed is perfectly aligned, north to south. You lie down on the firm, unyielding horsehair mattress. The wire mesh beneath you makes a faint, metallic groan. You are lying in the most scientifically advanced, hygienic, perfect, and magnetically aligned sleeping machine that money can buy. You have controlled every variable, and you are more awake than you have ever been in your life. The horsehair feels like it's actively fighting you. The wire mesh seems to amplify every tiny movement, and you can't shake the feeling that if you were to roll over and face east, you might disrupt the entire planet's magnetic field. You lie there, rigid, in your hygienic iron fortress, and you realize, with a sinking heart, that you have not bought a bed. You have bought a very expensive and very uncomfortable science experiment, and you are the lab rat. Your magnetically aligned bed has proven to be a spectacular disappointment. It is not a harmonious conductor of telluric forces. It is just a lumpy, uncomfortable, and very expensive piece of iron. Your insomnia remains defiantly unminuscule, but the salesman's pitch has planted a dangerous seed in your mind, the idea of invisible forces, of electricity and magnetism, as a cure for your modern ailments. The bed was too passive. Perhaps you need a more direct application of this wondrous new power. Once again, you find your answer in the back pages of the newspaper, nestled between the ads for soap and sewing machines. This advertisement is even more dramatic than the one for the patent medicine. It features a drawing of a man, his body radiating with crackling lines of energy, like a minor deity. The headline screams, RECHARGE, YOURVITA, LFORC. The ANIS, DHNEOVRO, USD, ISEI, ICI, SCHEPULV, HEHE, ERPATITHE, RAPA, ILTRO-C, only CT or CBLT. The ad copy is a masterpiece of pseudo-scientific persuasion. It explains that the human body is an electrical battery. The stresses of modern life, overwork, anxiety, the miasma of the city cause this battery to run down, leading to a loss of nerve-force. This results in a host of ailments, dyspepsia, melancholy, exhaustion, and, of course, insomnia. The Pulvermacher bill, it claims, does not merely treat the symptoms. It goes to the very source of the problem, creating a continuous, gentle galvanic current that recharges the body's flagging battery, restores the flow of vital energy, and promotes the profound, electrified sleep of perfect health. This is it. It's the synthesis of everything you've been told. It's not about food or air. It's about energy, the very stuff of life. It sounds like the most modern, most scientific solution imaginable. You go to the address listed in the ad, the London offices of the galvanic establishment. It is a slick, modern storefront. Inside, a man in a lab coat, clever marketing touch, explains the science behind the belt. He shows you the device itself. It is a strange and impressive minus-looking contraption. It is a wide belt made of leather and red velvet, to which a chain of small, alternating zinc and copper plates is attached. He explains that when the belt is worn against the skin, the body's natural perspiration acts as the electrolyte, causing the two different metals to generate a mild but constant electrical current. You are sold. You purchase a belt. It comes in a handsome box with a detailed instruction manual filled with anatomical diagrams and glowing testimonials from cured colonels and clergymen. That night, you prepare for bed with a new sense of excitement. This is not a dubious potion or a strange vegetable. This is technology. You strap the belt around your waist. It feels cool, heavy, and slightly absurd, like you are armoring yourself for a very strange kind of battle. You lie down, carefully, so as not to dislodge the metallic plates. This is where you discover a very specific and slightly unpleasant detail about these devices, the galvanic tingle. As the belt warms to your body temperature, you begin to feel a faint, prickling, itching sensation on your skin where the metal plates make contact. The instruction manual assures you that this is a good sign. It is the sensation of the vital current penetrating the dermal layers and revitalizing the nervous system. It feels less like revitalization and more like you are being gently electrocuted by a very weak battery, which is, in fact, exactly what is happening. The historical debate around the Victorian craze for medical electricity is fascinating. Was it purely a cynical scam, a way to cash in on the public's awed ignorance of a new and mysterious technology? Or was it driven by a genuine, if misguided, belief in the therapeutic power of electricity? The scam argument is strong. Entrepreneurs like Isaac Pulvermacher were brilliant marketers who used scientific language to sell cheaply made devices at a huge markup. There was no real evidence that these weak electrical currents had any therapeutic effect beyond a mild skin irritation. They were the 19th century equivalent of magic bracelets and detox foot pads. However, Other historians argue that we shouldn't underestimate the genuine excitement and fusion surrounding electricity at the time. It was a miracle force. It powered the telegraph, which could send messages across continents in an instant. It was beginning to light up the cities. If it could do all that, why couldn't it cure gout or a nervous stomach? For many, wearing an electric belt was an act of faith in progress, an attempt to harness the very power that was transforming their world and apply it to their own ailing bodies. Were they used as fools, or were they just optimistic children of a new technological age? You lie in your bed, the belt prickling your skin. You try to focus on the feeling, to imagine the vital force flowing into you, recharging your depleted nerve. But the tingle is just annoying. It's another distraction, another physical sensation that keeps your mind anchored in a state of wakeful analysis. You are acutely aware of the strange metallic harness strapped to your body. The hours tick by. No wave of electrified slumber comes. The only current you feel is a current of deep, profound regret at the money you have spent. The belt, this technological marvel that promised to harmonize you with the fundamental forces of the universe, is just an uncomfortable, itchy piece of metal and velvet. It has failed to recharge your battery. It has only managed to drain your wallet. The electric belt, your so minus called silent friend, now lies discarded in a drawer, a monument to your own gullibility. You have tried tonics, foods, and technologies, all to no avail. Your sleepsulence has become a stubborn, chronic companion. Your London doctor, when you visit him again, seems to have run out of confident pronouncements. He looks at you with a mixture of pity and professional frustration. Then, he makes a final, desperate suggestion. There is, he says, lowering his voice, a more vigorous course of treatment. It is not for the faint of heart, but for stubborn cases of nervous disease. It has shown some remarkable results. I am speaking of the water cure, hydropathy. He recommends a stay at a hydropath IC establishment, or hydro, in the countryside. These were a new and fashionable type of institution, part spa, part hospital, part resort, dedicated to the healing power of water. You are desperate enough to try anything. You pack your bags and take a train to a grand, Gothic minus-looking hydro nestled in the green hills of Malvern. The moment you arrive, you realize this is not a place of rest and relaxation. It is a place of rigid, quasi-military discipline. The director of the establishment, a stern man with the zeal of a true believer, outlines your daily schedule. You will rise at 5 a.m. You will consume a simple, vegetarian diet. You will engage in vigorous, prescribed mountain walks. And, most importantly, you will undergo a series of water treatments. Your first treatment is the Neptune's girdle. You are wrapped in a cold, wet cloth from your waist to your thighs, and then you are expected to go for a brisk walk until the cloth becomes warm from your own body heat. It is a shocking, uncomfortable, and deeply unpleasant experience. But that is just the warm minus up. The hydro's arsenal of treatments is vast and terrifying. There is the plunge bath, a deep pool of frigid water into which you are expected to plunge for a few seconds. There is the douche, where a powerful jet of icy water is directed at a specific part of your body. And then there is the centerpiece of the hydropath icy experience, the treatment that is supposed to be particularly effective for insomnia, the wet sheet pack. You are led into a small, tiled room. A cot is covered with a thick waterproof sheet, on top of which is a linen sheet that has been soaked in cold water and wrung out. You are instructed to undress. Then, you are laid down and swiftly, expertly, wrapped up in the cool, wet sheet like a mummy. You are wrapped so tightly, you can barely move. On top of this, you are covered with a mountain of heavy woolen blankets. The initial shock of the cold is breathtaking. It feels like you are being encased in ice. You shiver violently. A powerful, primal urge to escape, to fight your way out, grips you, but you are pinned down by the weight of the blankets. A calm, severe minus-looking attendant tells you to breathe deeply and to submit to the restorative power of the water. This is where you discover a very specific and rather horrific detail of the heroic medicine of the era. The goal of the wet sheet pack was to induce a therapeutic fever. The initial cold shock was meant to be followed by a reaction, where the body's vital force would fight back, generating intense heat. You would begin to sweat profusely under the mountain of blankets. This sweating was believed to purge the body of its toxins and balance the nervous system. You are, in effect, being deliberately unscientifically cooked in your own juices. The historical debate around chiroptothy is fascinating. Was it a form of medical torture, a dangerous and pseudo-scientific quackery that did more harm than good? Or was it, for all its harshness, one of the first holistic health movements, a reaction against the drug-heavy, interventionist medicine of the cities? The critics of chiroptothy point out that there was no scientific basis for its claims. The treatments were often brutal and could be dangerous for people with weak hearts or other underlying conditions. The founders of the movement, like Vincent Price, Nitz and Salisa, were often lay people with no formal medical training. However, other historians argue that the water cure's popularity tells us something important about what the Victorians felt was missing from their lives. The hydro offered a clean environment, a simple diet, regular exercise, and a structured routine, all things that were absent from the chaotic, polluted, and stressful life of the industrial city. The water treatments themselves may have been nonsense, but the overall lifestyle regimen may have had real benefits. Was the cure the water, or was it simply the escape from London? You lie wrapped in your wet, steamy cocoon. After the initial shivering subsides, a strange thing happens. The intense physical sensation, the sheer overwhelming reality of being cold, then hot, then sweating, forces your racing mind to stop. You can't worry about your accounts or your social standing when your entire being is focused on the simple, primal act of enduring. After an hour, you are unwrapped. You are red, sweating, and completely exhausted. The attendant sponges you down with cool water. You are led back to your room and told to rest. You lie down on your simple, hard bed, and for the first time without the aid of a drug, you fall into a deep, profound, and utterly depleted sleep. It is not a gentle or a peaceful sleep. It is the sleep of total physical and mental surrender. You have not been soothed or cured. You have been subdued. You have been conquered by cold water and woolen blankets. As you drift off, you wonder if this is the only way to find peace in this frantic age, not by calming the storm in your mind, but by subjecting your body to a hurricane. Your stay at the water-cure establishment is a brutal but, in a strange way, effective experience. The sheer physical exhaustion of the regimen silences your mind in a way no tonic or diet ever could. But you know you cannot live your life wrapped in a wet sheet. You must return to London. You must find a way to integrate the principles of the hydro into your urban life. You leave with a new set of instructions from the hydro's director. They involve diet and exercise, but his most fervent piece of advice is about your mental habits, particularly your bedtime reading. He is a firm believer in the power of mental tranquilization. The mind of the insomnia, he had explained, his voice filled with passion, is a galloping horse. You cannot simply command it to stop. You must gently, patiently, lead it to a halt. You must bore it into submission. And so, you embark on a new quest to search for the most boring book in the English language. This is not as easy as it sounds. The Victorian-era was a golden age of popular, thrilling literature. The newspapers are full of sensationalist crime reports. The circulating libraries are filled with the serialized novels of authors like Charles Dickens and Wilkie Collins, with their gripping plots, dramatic cliffhangers, and emotional turmoil. This, according to your new philosophy, is pure poison for the sleepless mind. You consciously avoid anything with a hint of excitement. You browse the bookshops on Charing Cross Road, not for pleasure, but for soporific. You are looking for books with titles that promise an immediate and profound state of tedium. You find a volume of parliamentary debates from the previous session. You purchase a lengthy treatise on the history of crop rotation in northern England. Your prize acquisition is a book titled Sermons on the Lesser Epistles of Street, taught by a famously dry and long-winded clergyman. That night, You prepare for your new ritual. You get into bed, prop up your pillows, and open the book of sermons. The print is small, the sentences are long and convoluted, and the subject matter is a dense and impenetrable thicket of theological argument. The author spends 6 pages debating the precise meaning of a single Greek preposition. You begin to read. Your mind, accustomed to the fast pace of novels and newspapers, rebels. It tries to find a story, a point of interest, but there is none. There is only a vast, grey desert of scholarly prose. Your eyelids begin to feel heavy. The galloping horse of your mind is slowing to a trot. You read another paragraph about the syntactical ambiguities of the original RMA. The horse is now walking. You manage one more page. The horse has stopped, laying down in its field, and refused to move. You place the book on your nightstand, blow out the candle, and sink into a state of deep, intellectually minus pulverized sleep. It works. For several nights in a row, the sheer, crushing boredom of your reading material acts as a powerful sedative. You have discovered the literary equivalent of the wet sheet pad. This is where you stumble upon a very strange and specific literary genre of the period, the improving book. The Victorians had a powerful belief in self-improvement. They consumed vast numbers of books that were not designed for entertainment, but for education and moral uplift. These were books on geology, botany, political economy, and etiquette. While many were written with great passion, a huge number were, by modern standards, incredibly dry and didactic. The idea that one should read for pleasure was still a slightly suspect concept for the serious-minded middle class. Reading was supposed to be good for you, like a cold bath or a brisk walk. The historical debate here is about the nature of Victorian reading culture. Was it a vibrant, diverse world of popular entertainment, driven by the rise of the mass-market novel? Or was it a culture dominated by a sense of duty, a desire for self-improvement, and a deep suspicion of frivolous fiction? The answer, of course, is that it was both. The same person who devoured the latest installment of Oliver Twist might also feel a duty to slog through a lengthy history of the Roman Empire. This created a kind of cultural tension. The desire for thrilling stories was constantly at war with the feeling that one should be reading something more edifying. Your new regimen, however, weaponizes this sense of duty. You are not just reading a boring book. You are performing a therapeutic act. You are taking your literary medicine. And the strange thing is, it seems to be working, at least for a while. But there is a flaw in your plan. After a week of reading the sermons, a strange thing starts to happen. Your mind, in its desperate search for stimulus, begins to find the sermons interesting. You start to appreciate the complex logic of the clergyman's arguments. You find yourself pondering the nuances of Pauline theology. You start to have opinions on the Greek preposition. The book has ceased to be a sedative. It has become a puzzle. The horse is awake again, and it is trying to learn Greek. You lie in bed, your mind now buzzing with theological questions instead of accounting worries. You have been defeated by your own brain's refusal to be bored. The quest for the perfect soporific text, you realize, is a moving target. You look at the heavy, leather-bound book on your nightstand. It was supposed to be your ally in the war against sleepsins, but it has betrayed you. It has committed the one unforgivable sin, for a sleep-hate it has become interesting. You realize, with a sigh, that you will have to find an even duller book tomorrow. The search for perfect boredom, it seems, is a lifelong and surprisingly stimulating quest. Your literary tranquilizer has failed you, a victim of its own accidental interestences. You realize that a passive approach, whether through potions or prose, is not enough. You must take a more active role in tiring yourself out. You must, as every Victorian health manual insists, embrace the gospel of exercise. Your regimen dictates the specifics. You must walk for 1 hour every day, preferably in the late afternoon. You must walk at a steady, vigorous pace. 3 miles an hour is the recommended speed. You must maintain an upright posture, your chest out, your arms swinging rhythmically. You are not to stop and look in shop windows. You are not to dawdle. You are a machine for walking, and your purpose is to efficiently oxygenate your blood and tire your muscles. You choose one of the new, grand public parks, like Regent's Park, as your arena. These parks were themselves a product of the Victorian obsession with health and public improvement. They were designed as the lungs of London, green spaces where the city's inhabitants could escape the smoke and miasma and breathe healthful air. As you stride along the carefully laid minus-out paths, you become part of a strange parade. You see other men and women, all marching with the same grim determination. They are all following the same advice, all seeking the same cure for their modern, urban maladies. You exchange brisk, no-nonsense nods as you pass each other. There is a sense of shared purpose, a fellowship of the furiously walking. The conversation, if you walk with a companion, is also meant to be helpful. You are to avoid morbid or exciting topics. The ideal conversation is about the beauty of nature, the wonders of science, or the importance of moral duty. It is as brisk and purposeful as your stride. This is where you encounter a wonderfully specific and slightly absurd aspect of Victorian exercise culture, the pedestrianism craze. For a time, pedestrianism, or competitive walking, was one of the most popular spectator sports in the country. Huge crowds would gather to watch pedestrians walk incredible distances, often for days on end, around a city. These men were the athletic superstars of their day. This popular craze filtered down into the everyday culture of walking. The idea of walking as a competitive, athletic, and morally virtuous activity was in the air. The historical debate here is about the meaning of this new focus on exercise. Was it a genuine health movement, a sensible reaction to the increasingly sedentary lives of the middle class? Or was it another form of the famous Victorian work ethic, applied to leisure? Some historians argue that the rise of rational recreation, as it was called, was a major step forward in public health. It encouraged people to get out of their stuffy houses and polluted streets and engage in activities that were genuinely good for them. It was part of a broader movement that included the creation of public libraries, museums, and parks, all designed to provide the working classes with improving alternatives to the pub and the gin palace. Other scholars, however, see a darker side. They argue that the Victorians were incapable of simply playing. They had to turn leisure into a form of work. The health walk, with its rigid rules, its focus on efficiency, and its moral purpose, is a perfect example. It is not about joy, or exploration, or simple, aimless pleasure. It is about discipline, self-control, and productivity. You are not just walking, you are investing in your health, improving your constitution, and building your character. It is another task to be completed, another box to be ticked on the long list of duties of a respectable Victorian citizen. You march on, your arms pumping, your legs aching. You time your laps around the park with your new pocket watch, another symbol of this time-obsessed age. You are indeed tiring yourself out. The physical fatigue is real, but you also feel a growing sense of rebellion. This prescribed, monotonous exercise feels like another prison. Your mind, instead of being calmed by the healthful surroundings, is bored and resentful. You long to stop and watch the ducks on the pond. You want to lie on the grass and look at the clouds. You want to do all the things that have no purpose, no goal, and no health benefit whatsoever. As you complete your final lap, exactly on the 1-hour mark, you feel a sense of accomplishment, but not of peace. You have done your duty. You have been a good, productive, health-conscious Victorian. You have tired your body, but your mind is still a whirring engine of frustration. You walk home through the darkening streets. The physical weariness is there, a dull ache in your muscles. But as you lie in bed that night, the familiar restlessness returns. The horse of your mind is no longer galloping with anxiety. It is now rotting with a dull, resentful boredom. You have discovered that you can march your way to exhaustion, but you cannot, it seems, march your way to sleep. Your body is exhausted from the prescribed walks, but your mind remains stubbornly, defiantly away. You have tried to jog it, bore it, and physically exhausted, all without success. It has become clear that you are not fighting a physical ailment. You are fighting a battle within your own consciousness. And so, you decide to seek out a practitioner who specializes not in the body, but in the mind itself. You are going to visit a hypnotist. Hypnotism, or mesmerism as it was more commonly known, occupied a strange and shadowy space in the Victorian world. It was not quite medicine, not quite science, and not quite supernatural, but a fascinating and controversial blend of all three. It was practiced by a wide range of people, from serious medical researchers to theatrical showmen, for the desperate and the sleepless. It offered a tantalizing promise, the ability to command the mind to do what it would not do on its own. You find a mesmer IST through a discreet advertisement. His name is Drive, so is Crane, and his consulting room is very different from your first doctor's office. It is not a place of scientific authority, but a theatrical mystery. The room is dimly lit, the curtains are heavy velvet, and there is a faint, sweet smell of incense in the air. Dr. Crane himself is a charismatic figure with piercing eyes and low, elegant hand. He speaks in a low, soothing, and incredibly confident voice. He explains the theory behind his practice. He tells you that an invisible magnetic fluid or life force flows through all living things. In a healthy person, this fluid is balanced and harmonious. But in a person suffering from a nervous disorder like insomnia, the fluid is blocked or disordered. His job as a mesmer IST is to use his arm, stronger magnetic force, to manipulate your fluid, restore the harmony, and induce a magnetic sleep, a deep, healing trance that is more restorative than any natural slumber. You are, by now, deeply skeptical of miracle cures, but his confidence is infectious, and you are willing to try anything. He has you sit in a comfortable, high-backed armchair. He tells you to relax, to empty your mind, and to focus on his eyes. The process begins. Dr. Crane stands before you and begins to make a series of slow, deliberate passes with his hands. He sweeps them from your head down to your feet, without ever touching you, as if he were smoothing out your invisible magnetic field. He repeats this motion again and again. His breathing is deep and rhythmic. The only sound in the room is the ticking of a clock and his own mesmerizing voice. You are feeling calm. He intones. Your limbs are becoming heavy. A pleasant warmth is spreading through your body. Your eyelids are so very heavy. You wish only to close them. You are sinking into a deep, peaceful state of repose. This is where you discover a strange and specific technique of the early hypnotists, the use of a fascination object. Sometimes, to help the patient focus, the mesmer IST would have them stare at a spinning disc, a swinging pendulum, or a polished piece of crystal. The goal was to fatigue the optic nerve and lull the conscious mind into a state of submission. Dr. Crane needs no such props. His own intense gaze is his instrument. The historical debate around mesmerism is a fierce one. Was it a genuine, if misunderstood, psychological phenomenon, a precursor to modern psychotherapy and the discovery of the subconscious? Or was it a theatrical sham, a form of charismatic charlatanism that relied on the power of suggestion and the suggestibility of the patient? The proponents of the first view, including some serious medical men of the era, believed they had discovered a new force of nature. They documented cases where mesmerism was used as a form of anesthesia, allowing patients to undergo surgery without feeling pain. They saw it as a powerful new tool for treating nervous and psychological disorders. The skeptics, however, dismissed it as pure humbug. They argued that the mesmeric trance was nothing more than a performance, a piece of collaborative theater between a dominant mesmer IST and a suggestible, often hysterical, patient. They believed the effects were due to imagination and a desire to please the practitioner. Was the magnetic fluid a real force, or was it all just in the mind? The very question was a revolutionary one. You sit in the chair, Dr. Crane's hands sweeping through the air in front of you, and a strange thing happens. Against all your cynical expectations, you do begin to feel something. The dim light, the incense, the rhythmic movements, and his deep, repetitive voice all combine to create a powerful, soporific effect. Your own breathing slows to match his. Your limbs do feel heavy. Your eyelids flutter. Is he truly manipulating your magnetic fluid? Or is your sleep minus deprived? Desperate mind simply grabbing onto the first plausible suggestion of rest it has encountered in months. You don't know, and at this moment, you don't care. You will sleep tonight, Doctor, Crane's voice says, seeming to come from a great distance. When your head touches the pillow, you will sink into a deep and peaceful slumber. You will sleep soundly through the night, and you will wake refreshed. Sleep. The session ends. You leave his office feeling strangely light and calm, as if a great weight has been lifted. That night, you go to bed with a new sense of anticipation. You lie down, and the mesmerized's final command, sleep, echoes in your mind. It is a key, turning a lock you thought was permanently rusted shut, and, to your profound astonishment, you do. The mesmerized's cure, while surprisingly effective, feels unsettling. The sleep it provides is deep, but it doesn't feel entirely your own. It feels borrowed, a state of mind implanted by another person's will. The idea of depending on Droth, Crane and his mysterious magnetic fluids for your nightly rest is not a comforting one. You long for something simpler, more natural, something you can control yourself. You decide to turn away from the new, radical, and often terrifying cures of the modern world and look backward, towards the gentler, more traditional remedies of the countryside. You are searching not for a miracle drug or a scientific apparatus, but for a piece of old fashioned folk wisdom. You find it in a small, dusty herbalist shop, tucked away on a side street far from the grand emporiums and consulting rooms you have been frequenting. The shop is run by an old woman with kind, wrinkled eyes and hands that smell of lavender and chomoline. You tell her of your troubles, and she does not speak of your nerves or your digestion or your magnetic fluids. She simply nods and says, "The city makes for a restless pillow, doesn't it?" She recommends a remedy that has been used for centuries, a cure that relies not on ingestion or esoteric forces, but on the simple, gentle power of scent. She sells you a sleep pillow, Relaxation. It is a small, fat pillow, a little larger than a book, made of soft, unbleached cotton. It is not meant to replace your regular pillow, but to be tucked inside your pillowcase or placed next to your head on the bolster. You lift it to your nose. The scent is wonderful. It is a dry, green, slightly bitter smell, like a field of hay at the end of a long summer's day. This is the smell of dried hops, the same plant used to give beer its bitter flavor. The old woman explains that hops have been known for generations to have a soporific virtue. She tells you that the farm workers who harvested the hops in Kent would often fall asleep in the fields, lulled by the plant's powerful aroma. Your pillow, she says, is also filled with a mixture of other calming herbs, lavender, to ease a troubled mind, and chomoline, to promote a gentle tranquility. You take your new pillow home. It seems so simple, so humble, compared to the electric bells and patent medicines you have tried. There are no grand scientific claims, no promises of a miracle cure. It is just a small bag of dried plants. That night, you place the hot pillow next to your head. As you settle in, the warmth of your body releases the fragrant oils from the herbs. The air around you fills with a soft, green, floral scent. It is the opposite of the city's smell. It is not the smell of coal, smoke and industry, but of gardens and fields. This is where you discover a very real and scientifically sound piece of traditional knowledge. Hops do, in fact, contain a mild sedative. The plant contains a chemical called methylbutanol, which has a calming effect on the central nervous system. The Victorians did not know the name of the chemical, but they had observed its effects for centuries. This was not pseudo-science. It was a form of grassroots pharmacology, knowledge passed down through generations of observation. The historical debate here is about the relationship between folk medicine and the rise of the professional medical establishment. Was the new, scientific medicine of doctors like doctors Finch always superior to the traditional, plant-based remedies of the past? The medical establishment of the time certainly thought so. They often dismissed herbalism and folk wisdom as old wives' tales and dangerous superstition. They sought to replace these unscientific practices with their own, more rational system of medicine. based on chemistry and physiology. However, many historians now argue that this was a great loss. In their rush to professionalize, the doctors of the 19th century often threw the baby out with the bathwater. They discarded centuries of practical knowledge about the medicinal properties of plants in favor of harsh mineral minus-based drugs and dangerous surgical procedures. The old herbalist in her dusty shop may not have known the Latin names for herb plants, but she often had a more practical and effective remedy for common ailments than the university minus-trained physician with his theories about miasma and his bottle of mercury. Was the rise of scientific medicine a pure advancement, or did it also involve the suppression of a valuable alternative form of knowledge? You lie in your bed, inhaling the gentle, calming scent of the hops and lavender. It does not knock you out like the laudanum. It does not trick you like the patent syrup. It does not exhaust you like the wet sheet that simply soothes. The scent seems to untie the tight, anxious knots in your mind. It transports you, just for a moment, out of your stuffy London room and into a quiet, sun-drenched field. The roaring engine of your brain begins to quiet down, not because it is being forced or tricked, but because it is being gently persuaded. For the first time, you feel a sense of genuine, unforced drowsiness. It is a natural feeling, a gentle invitation to rest. You turn over, your face buried in the fragrant pillow, and as you drift off, you realize that the most effective cure you have found so far is not a product of the new, noisy, industrial age, but a quiet, fragrant whisper from the past. The gentle, herbal scent of the hot pillow provides a new kind of relief. It doesn't offer the instant oblivion of a drug, but it brings a measure of peace. It gives you a foothold, a small, quiet space from which you can begin to assess your situation with a clearer head. And as you lie there, night after night, you start to suspect that you have been looking for the cure in all the wrong places. You have treated your insomnia as an invading enemy. You have bombarded it with drugs, drowned it in cold water, bored it with sermons, and tried to trick it with pseudo-minus scientific gadgets. You have focused on your stomach, your nerves, your magnetic alignment. There you breathe. You have focused on everything except the most obvious source of the problem, your thoughts. You begin to reflect on the nature of your anxieties. What is it that keeps the galloping horse of your mind running all night? It is not a single, grand terror. It is 1,000 small, persistent worries, the unique anxieties of your age. You worry about money. You live in a time of unprecedented economic growth, but also of brutal competition and terrifying instability. You see fortunes made overnight and lost in a single bad investment. You read stories of families who were once prosperous, now reduced to poverty, their furniture sold, their homes repossessed. The pressure to get on, to succeed, to maintain your precarious position in the middle class is relentless. At night, your mind becomes a ledger, endlessly adding and subtracting, calculating risks, and rehearsing potential disasters. You worry about your health. You live in a city where life is fragile. You see the black minus-draped funeral processions passing down the street every day. You are surrounded by talk of cholera, typhus, consumption. You are hyper-minus-aware of your own body, constantly monitoring it for the first sign of a cough, a fever, a morbid humor. Your quest for sleep has, ironically, only amplified this anxiety, turning your body into a source of constant, fearful surveillance. And you worry about your soul. You live in an age of profound religious faith, but also of profound religious doubt. The old certainties are being challenged by new scientific discoveries, like Darwin's theories on evolution. The newspapers are filled with heated debates between science and religion. You are caught in the crossfire. You feel a deep, spiritual unease, a sense of being unmoored in a rapidly changing world. The simple, unquestioning faith of your ancestors is no longer possible, but the new, godless world of science offers no comfort. This is where you touch upon a concept that modern historians and sociologists are deeply interested in: the idea of social strain. They argue that periods of rapid social and technological change, like the Victorian-era, create immense psychological stress on individuals. The old rules, The old ways of life are breaking down, but the new ones are not yet fully formed. People are left feeling disoriented, anxious, undalienated. The historical debate is about how the Victorians coped with this strain. Some historians focus on the stiff upper lip, the famous Victorian emphasis on repression, self-control, and the suppression of emotion. They argue that the Victorians channeled their anxieties into their work, their obsession with etiquette, and their strict moral codes. Other scholars, however, see a very different picture. They look at the high rates of nervous disease, the widespread addiction to opiates, the fascination with spiritualism and the occult, and they see a society that was not repressed, but was, in fact, screaming in silent, psychological pain. They argue that insomnia was not just a medical condition, it was a cultural symptom, a collective cry of a society that was too anxious to sleep. Was the Victorian-era an age of admirable self-discipline, or an age of profound, widespread neurosis? You lie in your bed, the scent of lavender in the air, and you see the truth of this in your own experience. Your insomnia is not a simple malfunction of your body. It is the physical manifestation of the weight of your world. It is the sound of the factory whistle, the anxiety of the stock market, the terror of the collar reward, and the echo of a doubt-filled prayer, all playing out in the theater of your mind. This realization is both terrifying and liberating. It is terrifying because you realize there is no simple cure. No pill, no diet, no gadget can solve the problem of being alive in the 19th century. But it is also liberating. You can stop blaming your body. You can stop seeing your stomach as a traitor and your nerves as faulty wiring. You are not a broken machine. You are a human being, reacting to an overwhelming world. This doesn't make the sleepslands go away, but it changes its character. It is no longer mysterious, invading disease. It is a part of you, a reflection of your life. You have not found a cure, but you have, at last, found a correct diagnosis. The problem is not in your bed, or in your food, or in your air. The problem is in the very air you breathe as a citizen of this new, frantic, and magnificent age. And the first step towards peace, you begin to suspect, is to stop fighting. Your moment of self-diagnosis, the realization that your insomnia is a disease of the mind and not the body, feels like a turning point, but it also leaves you stranded. If there is no external cure, what is one to do? Your journey has taken you through the realms of medicine, diet, technology, and folk wisdom, all without lasting success. There seems to be nowhere left to turn. And then, you hear of a new kind of doctor. He is not one of the old guard, like Dr. Finch, with his confident pronouncements about digestion and miasma. He is part of a new, emerging school of thought. They call themselves alien psychologists, and they are the precursors to modern psychiatrists. They are interested not in the mechanics of the body, but in the workings of the mind. You find one. His name is Dr. Ambrose Holt, and his consulting room is a revelation. It is not dark and imposing. It is light and airy. There are no shelves of dusty medical tomes, but there are books of poetry. There is no large, authoritarian desk separating you. Instead, there are two comfortable armchairs, facing each other. Dr. Holt himself is a younger man, without the theatrical whiskers of his older colleagues. He does not begin by telling you what is wrong with you. He begins by asking you questions. He asks about your work, your family, your worries, your dreams. He listened. This, in itself, is a revolutionary act. You tell him your story. You tell him about the beef tea, the electric belt, the wet sheet pack, the endless, anxious nights. He does not scoff. He does not offer a simple diagnosis. He nods, and for the first time, you feel you are not just being listened to, but being heard. When you are finished, he does not offer you a potion or a gadget. He begins to talk about the hygiene of the nerves. This is a new and exciting concept. He explains that just as the body requires physical hygiene, cleanliness, good food, fresh air, the mind requires its own form of hygiene. Your problem, as I see it, he says, his voice calm and reasonable, is not one of disease, but of habit. Your mind has learned the habit of wakefulness. It has learned to associate the night with anxiety and struggle. We must not try to conquer this habit with force. We must gently, patiently, educate your mind. We must teach it the habit of sleep. His prescription is startling in its simplicity. He tells you to establish a sanctuary of slumber. Your bedroom, he says, should be used for sleeping, and for nothing else. You are not to read in bed, not even your boring sermons. You are not to do accounts in bed. You are not to lie in bed worrying. If you find yourself awake for more than 20 minutes, you are to get up, go to another room, and do something quiet and calming until you feel sleepy again. The bed must become a place that your mind associates only with peace and rest. He also talks about the importance of a regular rhythm. You are to go to bed at the same time every night and, crucially, get up at the same time every morning, regardless of how much you have slept. This, he explains, will help to regulate your body's own internal chronometer. This is where you encounter a very specific and forward-thinking idea for the time, the concept of stimulus control. Dr. Hart is essentially describing a rudimentary form of what would much later become a cornerstone of cognitive-behavioral therapy for insomnia CBT-I. The idea that you could change your psychological state by changing your behaviors and your environment was a radical departure from the purely medicinal or physical models of the past. The historical debate here is about the origins of modern psychotherapy. Did it spring fully formed from the minds of giants, like Freud and Jung in the early 20th century? Or does it have deeper roots in the work of these early, often forgot, unalienstessen nerve doctors of the Victorian era? Many historians now argue for the latter. They see in the work of men like Dr. Hart the very beginnings of a new way of thinking about mental health. They were moving away from seeing madness as a sign of demonic possession or moral failure, and towards seeing it as a product of life experiences, social pressures, and habitual patterns of thought. They were, in their own way, inventing the talking cure. Were they true scientists, or just more compassionate and intuitive observers of the human condition than their predecessors? Dr. Hart's advice seems almost too simple, too sensible. There is no magic bullet, no exotic ingredient, no mysterious force. There is only habit, routine, and discipline. It lacks the theatrical appeal of mesmerism or the dramatic promise of a patent medicine. It puts the responsibility for the cure squarely back on you. You leave his office feeling not a dramatic sense of hope, but a quiet, fragile sense of purpose. You have been given a new set of tools. They are not as exciting as an electric belt, but they feel more real. That night, you put his advice into practice. You establish your new routine. When you find yourself lying awake, your mind beginning to race, you do not fight it. You do not curse your own brain. You simply get up. You go into the other room and read a few pages of a novel, a mildly interesting one. This time, when you feel a genuine wave of drowsiness, you return to bed. It is a slow and frustrating process. Some nights you are up and down half a dozen times, but you are no longer a passive victim, waiting for a cure to be done to you. You are an active participant in your own recovery. You are not just trying to sleep, you are trying to learn how to sleep. And this, you realize, is the most profound difference of all. Your sessions with Dr. Hart and his nerve hygiene have armed you with a new, more sensible approach. The emphasis on routine and habit provides a structure, a framework for your nights. But you soon discover that even the most sensible advice is not a magic wand. There are still nights when you lie awake, the old anxieties flaring up, the city symphony playing its familiar, disruptive tune. The difference is that now, you have a choice. You can fall back into the old pattern of struggle, of frustration, of seeing your wakefulness as a personal failure, or you can try something truly radical. You can try to accept it. This is not a passive resignation. It is an active, conscious decision to change your relationship with sleepiness. You have spent months, perhaps years, treating your insomnia as an enemy to be vanquished. You have waged a war against it, and you have lost, every single time. The war itself you realize, has become a major source of your suffering. The fear of not sleeping is now a bigger problem than the not sleeping itself. So, one night, as you lie in bed and the familiar feeling of wide-minus awakeness descends, you try a new tact. You do not fight it. You do not get angry. You do not start worrying about how tired you will be tomorrow. You simply notice it. You say to yourself, I am awake. Hello, old friend. You let go of the desperate, clawing need for perfect sleep. What is perfect sleep? Anyway, it is a concept you have learned from Dry Finch's pamphlets on the patent medicine arts. It is the idea of 8 solid, uninterrupted, dreamless hours, a state of perfect, machine-like efficiency. But perhaps this idea is the problem. Perhaps sleep, like life, is not meant to be perfect. You begin to practice a form of mindfulness long before the term was ever invented. You lie in your bed and you listen. You listen to the sound of your own breathing. You listen to the ticking of the clock. But instead of hearing it as a hammer, you try to hear it as simple, neutral rhythm. You listen to the sounds of the city outside, the distant train whistle, the clatter of a carriage, and you try not to label them as noise or distractions. You try to hear them as the simple sounds of the world you live in. This is where you touch upon a very subtle but profound philosophical shift. The Victorian era is often seen as the age of conquest. It was about conquering nature, conquering disease, conquering foreign lands, and conquering the self through discipline and will. The idea of acceptance, or letting go, was deeply counter-cultural. It was seen as a form of weakness, or failure. The historical debate here is about the emotional landscape of the Victorians. Were they truly the confident, self-assured masters of the universe they presented themselves as? Or was their obsession with conquest and control a defense mechanism? A way to manage a deep-seated anxiety about a world that was, in fact, chaotic and uncontrollable? Some historians argue that the Victorian stiff upper lip was a sign of genuine strength and resilience. It was what allowed them to build an empire and endure incredible hardship. Other scholars, however, see it as a psychological straitjacket. They argue that the inability to accept imperfection, to admit to vulnerability, and to simply be without doing, created a tremendous amount of hidden suffering. The pressure to be a perfect, efficient, self-controlled man or woman was immense. Your struggle for perfect sleep is a microcosm of this larger cultural struggle. As you lie in bed, practicing this new art of acceptance, something strange begins to happen. The panic subsides. The desperate struggle ceases. You are still awake. That you are no longer at war. The bed is no longer a battlefield. It is just a bed. You find a new use for these quiet, wakeful hours. You don't get up and pace anxiously. You lie still and you think. You plan your next day in a calm, orderly way. You reflect on a pleasant memory. You compose a letter in your head. You are turning this wasted time into something quiet, personal, and even productive. And the paradox is this. The moment you stop trying so desperately to fall asleep, the moment you make peace with your wakefulness, sleep becomes more likely to visit. It is a shy creature. You realize it is frightened away by the loud, desperate clamor of your need for it. But when you are quiet and calm and no longer looking for it, it will sometimes, gently, sit down beside you. You are not cured. There are still good nights and bad nights. But you have been liberated from the tyranny of the cure. You have abandoned the quest for a magic bullet, for a perfect, 8-hour oblivion. You are learning to live with, and even find a quiet value in, the imperfect rhythms of your own mind and body. You have not conquered your insomnia. You have, in a way, made friends with it. And that, you realize, is a far more profound victory. Your newfound peace with your own wakefulness changes not just your nights, but your days. The world outside your window begins to look and sound different. You have spent so long seeing the city as your antagonist, a noisy, dirty, miasmatic monster that was the source of all your troubles. But now, with the volume of your own internal struggle turned down, you begin to hear it differently. You start to notice the rhythms of the city, the patterns in its chaos. You had always heard the sixer. Factory whistle as a shrill, violent intrusion. Now, you hear it as the city's heartbeat, the great, collective inhalation as thousands of people begin their day's work. It is the sound of your world waking up, the rumble of the trains on the newly built railways, which once felt like a personal assault, now sounds like a symbol of connection, of a nation being stitched together by iron and steam. It is the sound of progress, of possibility, of a letter from home arriving faster than ever before. Even the clatter of the horses and carriages on the cobblestones takes on a new character. You begin to distinguish the sharp, quick trot of a doctor's buggy from the heavy, slow rumble of a brewer's tray. It is the sound of commerce, of life, of a million individual stories unfolding all around you. The city is no longer just noise. It is a language, and you are finally beginning to understand it. You take a walk through the city at dusk. You look at the gas lights, which you had once cursed for their intrusive glow. Now, you see the strange, theatrical beauty they create. They turn the familiar streets into a vast, mysterious stage set. They make the fog glow, turning the thick, soupy air into a golden, luminous haze. The city is transformed into a work of art, a living painting by Turner or a scene from a Dickens novel. This is where you touch upon a key theme in the art and literature of the 19th century, the urban sublime. The earlier romantic poets found the sublime that feeling of awe and terror and beauty in the wild, untamed nature of mountains and oceans. But a new generation of artists and writers began to find the same feeling in the man-made wilderness of the modern city. They were fascinated by its scale, its energy, its beauty, and its horror. They saw the sublime, not in a thunderstorm, but in the fiery glow of a steel mill at night. The historical debate is about whether this fascination was a celebration or a critique. Were these artists celebrating the power and dynamism of the new industrial age? Were they thrilled by the spectacle of human ingenuity? Or were they expressing a deep anxiety about this new world, a fear of its dehumanizing scale, its pollution, and its social injustices? Authors like Charles Dickens captured both sides of this coin. His novels are filled with a deep love for the energy and eccentricity of London life, but they are also a furious indictment of its poverty, its corruption, and its cruelty. He saw both the beauty and the horror in the gaslit street. Your own perception is shifting from one to the other. You are beginning to see the beauty. You are learning to filter the city's sounds and sights through a new lens, one of acceptance rather than resistance. You find a strange comfort in the city's anonymity. In a small village, everyone knows your business. Here, you are one of millions. You can walk through the crowded streets and be completely invisible, a single drop in a vast, flowing river of humanity. There is a freedom in this that you had not appreciated before. One night, you are lying awake. You hear the familiar sounds of distant shout, a church bell, the rumble of a cart. But instead of fighting them, you listen to them. You imagine the stories behind the sounds. The cart is taking produce to Covent Garden Market for the morning. The shout is a group of medical students on their way home from a late -night anatomy lesson. The bell is marking the passage of time for a city that is always in motion. The sounds no longer feel like an attack. They feel like a strange, industrial lullaby. They are the sounds of your home. They are the background music to your life. You are a part of this great, noisy, chaotic machine, and it is a part of you. You close your eyes. The city is still there. The noise is still there. But it is no longer the enemy. It is just the world, breathing around you. And in the heart of that great, mechanical breath, you find a strange and unexpected pocket of peace. You are not sleeping in spite of the city. You are, at last, sleeping within it. Your long, strange journey is coming to an end. You have traveled from the confident pronouncements of scientific medicine to the shadowy world of the occult, from the harsh discipline of the hydro to the gentle wisdom of the herbalist. You have battled your digestion, your nerves, your environment, and your own mind. You have emerged, not with a perfect cure, but with a hard -1, imperfect peace. One night, you feel a familiar restlessness creeping in. It is not the frantic, panicked anxiety of the past. but a milder, more familiar echo. It is a night when the city seems a little too loud, when your thoughts are a little too active. You get out of bed, not with a sense of failure, but with a calm sense of purpose. You know the routine. You will go to the other room. You will read a little. You will wait for the wave of drowsiness to come. You go to your small kitchen. You feel a slight chill in the air. You decide to make yourself a warm drink. You are not looking for a remedy or a tonic. You are not trying to soothe your nerves or nourish your brain. You just want something warm and comforting. You look in your larder. You see the dusty jar of beef tea extract and you shudder. You see the box of lettuce and the sad, shriveled onion and you smile. The ghosts of your past cures are all there. You decide on the simplest, most ancient remedy of all. You pour a cup of milk into a small saucepan and heat it gently on the stove. You don't add any honey or spices. You don't consult a pamphlet on its soporific properties. It is just warm milk. You sit in your armchair, sipping the warm, sweet milk. It tastes of childhood, of simplicity, of a time before you ever knew that sleep was a problem to be solved. It is a taste of profound, uncomplicated comfort. As you drink, you reflect on your journey. You think of Dr. Finch and his mechanical body, of Dr. Quaint and his magnetic fluids, of Dr. Hart and his hygiene of the mind. Each of them offered you a story, a way of understanding your suffering. Each story was a product of its time, a reflection of the age's hopes, fears, and obsessions. This is where you touch upon a final, profound historical idea, the social construction of illness. This theory suggests that the way we experience and understand an illness is shaped not just by the biological facts, but by the culture we live in. Your insomnia was not just a personal problem. It was a Victorian problem. You experienced it through the lens of Victorian science, Victorian morality, and Victorian anxiety. The cures you were offered were not just treatments. They were rituals that reflected the values of your society. The historical debate is about the extent to which this is true. Are all illnesses just stories we tell ourselves? Or are there underlying biological realities that exist independently of our cultural interpretations? Most historians today would agree that it is a complex interplay of both. The physical reality of sleep swings is real, but the meaning you attach to it, the suffering it causes, and the cures you seek are all deeply shaped by the world around you. You have, in a sense, traveled through the history of the Victorian mind. You started with a faith in the new, confident science of the body. You flirted with the dark magic of the opiates and the slick promises of the marketplace. You endured the heroic discipline of the water cure and the mind numbing boredom of the sermons. You explored the mysteries of the subconscious with the mesmer ISD and rediscovered the simple wisdom of the past in a fragrant pillow. Each step was a lesson. Each failure taught you something new. You learned that the body is not a machine, that the mind is not a simple engine, and that there is no magic bullet for the simple, human act of living in a complicated world. You finish your milk. You feel a gentle, natural drowsiness. It is time for bed. You go to your room, which is no longer a laboratory or a fortress, but simply a room. You lie down in your bed, which is no longer a scientific apparatus, but simply a bed. You close your eyes. The city outside is still humming its industrial lullaby. Your mind is still your own, with its own unique and imperfect rhythms. That the war is over. You have found a kind of peace, not in a bottle or a book, but in the simple, quiet act of acceptance. The journey has led you, in a great circle, right back to where you started. You are just a person, in a bed, in a room, hoping for a good night's sleep. And tonight, you think you just might get it. And so, the frantic search for a cure dissolves into the quiet calm of acceptance. The strange and wonderful remedies of the past, the beef tea, the electric belts, the mesmerizing passes of a stranger's hands, they all fade away, like the ghostly images of a magic lantern show. Their power, which once seemed so potent, is gone, leaving only the faint, lingering scent of lavender and the memory of a lesson learned. The noise of the great Victorian city, that symphony of steam, undying and frantic energy, begins to soften. It recedes into the background, becoming a gentle, distant hum, the sound of a world that is no longer your immediate concern. Your own thoughts, once a racing, panicked horse, now slow to a gentle walk, and then come to a peaceful standstill in a quiet, moonlit field. Let that stillness envelop you now. Feel the weight of your own body, a comfortable, welcome heaviness in the soft warmth of your bed. The journey is over. The striving has ceased. There are no more instructions to follow, no more tonics to take. There is only this moment, this quiet, this gentle descent into the deep, restorative peace that you have been seeking all along. Sleep is no longer a prize to be won, but a gift to be received, and it is here for you now. The end of the article. Good night.